Bruce Lee arrived in the United States as an immigrant with few resources, but with extraordinary talent. He had a clear goal: to achieve the Hollywood dream. Today, we return to Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle to visit the resting place of a true cinema legend and martial arts icon, Bruce Lee. His sudden passing shocked the entire world, and his grave has become a symbol of peace and tribute. For more than 50 years, Bruce Lee's grave remained untouched, a quiet place where fans paid tribute to his legacy. However, in 2025, during what was supposed to be just routine maintenance, workers made a completely unexpected discovery. Beneath the stone lay a hidden truth, something that would rekindle global fascination and stir deep emotions once again. What was found inside Bruce Lee's tomb? Let's find out. How it all began. Before Bruce Lee became an international icon, a legendary fighter, or a celebrated movie star, he was simply just a restless, energetic, and ambitious young teenager facing the bustling, crowded, and vibrant streets of Hong Kong, already boldly striking out against the world. Before the world even knew his name or recognized his extraordinary potential, remarkable talent, or indomitable spirit. That initial fire, raw and untamed, would become the foundation of a legacy that would change everything: martial arts cinema, and the way the East and West saw each other. Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco in 1940 during his father's Chinese opera tour, but his roots were firmly planted in Hong Kong. Baptized as Li Junfan, or Return Again, he was, from the very beginning, a child of two worlds. Growing up in post-war Hong Kong meant learning to get by, often, quite literally, with your own fists. In his teenage years, Bruce was already a skilled street fighter, quick with his strikes and even sharper with his mind. This raw talent found discipline when he began training with the great Wing Chun master, Yip Man. In that studio, Bruce learned more than just fighting techniques. He began to shape a personal philosophy that valued flexibility, efficiency, and the continuous expression of oneself. At 18, after a series of street fights and concerns for his safety, Bruce returned to the United States. He arrived in Seattle with almost no money, but with a determination that was impossible to ignore. He enrolled at the University of Washington, where he studied philosophy and opened his first martial arts school. What set Bruce apart was not just his technique, but who he chose to teach. At a time when martial arts were often kept as a tradition close to certain cultures, Bruce opened the doors to everyone, regardless of ethnicity or background. This decision unsettled traditional circles, but it also paved the way for something revolutionary. Mixing Wing Chun with boxing, fencing, and his own ideas about combat and movement, Bruce developed Jeet Kune Do, his personal expression of martial arts. It was not just a fighting style, but a rejection of the rigidity of fixed methods. Absorb what is useful, he would later write. Discard what is not. Hollywood eventually came calling. Cast as Kato in the series The Green Hornet, Bruce turned a supporting role into a cultural phenomenon. So much so that, in some countries, the show was literally renamed The Kato Show. But Hollywood still wasn't ready for a leading man of Chinese descent. Frustrated by stereotypes and racial barriers, Bruce returned to Hong Kong, where he decided to take full control of his own path. He wrote, directed, choreographed, and starred in a string of hits like Fist of Fury and Way of the Dragon, films that not only showcased his talent, but also broke cultural barriers and shattered box office records worldwide. Unfortunately, Bruce Lee passed away in 1973 at the age of 32, with many dreams still ahead of him. But what he left behind, his teachings, his philosophy, and his films, has only grown stronger with time. And in 2025, when his grave was reopened for the first time in decades, the world discovered that his story was far from over. A resting place in Seattle. Of all the places where Bruce Lee could have been buried, few would have imagined that his final resting place would be a quiet cemetery in Seattle. Bruce Lee is here, in Seattle. It was here that he founded his first school of philosophy. So, this is something truly significant. Hong Kong, the city where his fame exploded, and where millions saw him as a national hero, seemed like the most obvious choice. But for Linda Lee Cadwell, his widow, The decision was not based on public expectations, but rather on a personal truth. Seattle was not just a place where Bruce had lived. It was where his true journey had begun. Years before the fame, the magazine covers, and the movie contracts, Bruce was just a determined young man, trying to share his vision of martial arts. It was in Seattle that he opened his first school, taught students from all backgrounds, and developed the philosophies that would later shape Jeet Kune Do. It was also in this city that he met Linda. He fell in love and began to build a life. A life that was still taking shape when fate interrupted everything. In an interview shortly after Bruce's passing, Linda explained that Seattle held the couple's most meaningful memories. It was where Bruce built a future based on inclusion, discipline, and self-expression. And that made Seattle the most fitting place for him to rest. On July 31st, 1973, just a few days after his unexpected farewell, a private ceremony was held at Lakeview Cemetery, located on quiet hills overlooking Lake Washington. The site was chosen for its serenity and reverence. Friends and colleagues, including James Coburn and Steve McQueen, gathered in silence as Bruce was laid to rest in a grave marked by a polished granite headstone. The design of the headstone combined Eastern and Western influences, just like Bruce himself. Chinese characters stood side by side with phrases in English, including one of his most famous quotes: "The key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering." As the decades passed, the grave became more than just a memorial. It became a sacred destination for fans, martial artists, and thinkers from all over the world. Visitors would leave flowers, handwritten letters, nunchaku, and notes with personal stories about how Bruce had transformed their lives. For many, it was not just a grave. It was a classroom, a sanctuary, a source of strength. And so when the site was scheduled for maintenance in 2025, it was not just a structural upgrade. The world stood still. What had remained untouched for 52 years was about to be opened. The day the world was moved. Few farewells to public figures have generated as much confusion, suspicion, and sadness as Bruce Lee's. When the news spread on July 20th, 1973, that the martial arts icon, only 32 years old, had suddenly passed away in Hong Kong, the world struggled to process what had happened. Bruce was not just a rising star in cinema. He was a cultural force, a symbol of strength, discipline, and overcoming obstacles, who vanished at the height of his career. And it wasn't just the loss that shook people. It was also how little was actually known about what had really happened that day. Bruce was in an apartment belonging to actress Betty Ting Pei, supposedly reviewing a script for the film Game of Death. At a certain point, he complained of a headache. Ting gave him a common painkiller. What happened next remains a subject of debate to this day. Bruce lay down to rest and never got up again. Paramedics rushed him to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, but he was declared lifeless that same night. According to the report released by the coroner in September of that year, the official cause was cerebral edema, a swelling of the brain probably caused by an adverse reaction to the medication. No autopsy was performed, which was the standard procedure in Hong Kong at the time, as long as there were no clear signs of a crime. But for many, this explanation seemed incomplete from the very beginning. Rumors spread quickly. Some believed that the Triads, Hong Kong's most feared organized crime groups, were involved. Bruce was said to have refused to follow their rules. Could that have been reason enough to silence him? Others suspected poisoning or a reaction to the presence of substances like cannabis in his system, although doctors stated that the amount was not enough to cause any serious effect. An investigation conducted later that year supported the medical report, ruling out any suspicious involvement. Even so, the mystery persisted. How could someone in peak physical condition collapse so suddenly and without warning? The sense of mourning was overwhelming. In Hong Kong, tens of thousands of people took to the streets in grief. All around the world, fans and friends paid their respects. His wife Linda Lee remained at the center of it all. Deeply shaken, yet steadfast, ensuring that her partner received all the honors he deserved. A philosophy that went far beyond the screen. More than his impressive speed or his fame in cinema, Bruce Lee's true legacy lies in the philosophy that challenged people to rethink not only how to fight, but how to live. At the height of his fame, he offered something much deeper than physical technique, a way of being that valued self-knowledge over imitation, flexibility over rigidity, and above all, authenticity. By the early 1970s, Bruce was already disillusioned with the limitations of traditional martial arts. In an interview published in Black Belt magazine in 1971, he introduced Jeet Kune Do to the world, not just a fighting style, but a philosophy of life. This approach combined the close-range efficiency of Wing Chun with the mobility of boxing and the spontaneity of fencing. But more than its physical elements, Jeet Kune Do was an invitation to abandon rigid systems, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. This single phrase became a mantra, not just for martial artists, but for anyone seeking their own path in a world full of rigid expectations. This mindset also influenced the way Bruce viewed physical training. Long before the world understood its importance, he didn't train to look strong. He trained to be strong. He combined weightlifting, cardiovascular exercises, stretching, and speed training. He created a program that more closely resembled modern MMA conditioning than anything else available at the time. He meticulously recorded his workouts and had a knowledge of anatomy that few athletes of his era possessed. What made his routine revolutionary was not just the intensity, but the reflection of his belief in constant growth and adaptability. But perhaps the clearest expression of his way of thinking came from one of his most quoted phrases, "Be like water, my friend." For Bruce, water was the ideal form, shapeless, flexible, yet powerful. It could flow or crash. It adapted without losing its essence. This principle went far beyond combat. It became a life lesson on how to face adversity, preserve one's identity, and deal with change. Bruce was a voracious reader, and his personal library included everything from Western philosophy to Chinese classics. The social pioneer. Long before the world recognized him as a film icon or a martial arts legend, Bruce Lee was already breaking barriers that few dared to challenge. At a time when skin color determined opportunities and cultural control limited access, Bruce refused to accept any kind of limitation, especially those built on prejudice. His most lasting impact may not lie only in films or fights, but in the way he helped redefine who belonged and who had a voice. In the early 1960s, martial arts in the United States were still surrounded by rigid traditions and generally restricted to closed ethnic circles. It was widely accepted that Chinese martial arts should only be taught to other Chinese. Bruce Lee not only ignored this rule, he openly challenged it. In his first school, located in Seattle's Chinatown, he welcomed students of all ethnicities, backgrounds, and levels of experience. Jesse Glover, an African-American, became his first student and also his assistant instructor. Taki Kimura, a Japanese-American who faced severe discrimination after World War II, became one of his most loyal and close disciples. For Bruce, martial arts were not limited to culture. They were a path to liberation, self-respect, and connection between people. That same spirit accompanied him to Hollywood, where the industry still insisted on portraying Asian characters in a stereotypical way, almost always in submissive or comedic roles. Bruce rejected scripts with stereotypes, even if it meant turning down financially lucrative offers. His big break came with the series The Green Hornet, where his portrayal of Kato changed the public's perception of Asian characters on American television. He wasn't just a sidekick on screen. He was the soul of the show. In fact, in some Asian countries, the series was renamed The Kato Show, in honor of his striking presence on screen. But Bruce's influence went far beyond the cameras. He trained and formed friendships with people from different backgrounds and fields: boxers, dancers, actors, and athletes. Among them was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who not only learned martial arts from Bruce, but also acted alongside him in the film Game of Death. The decision to open the grave. Few resting places in modern history have held such a lasting fascination over the public imagination as Bruce Lee's grave in Seattle. For more than 5 decades, it remained untouched, a monument to one of the most influential figures in martial arts and cinema, as well as a silent sanctuary for fans from all over the world. But at the beginning of 2025, that silence was about to be respectfully interrupted. The city of Seattle, motivated by concerns over long-term preservation, made the unprecedented decision to open the tomb for maintenance purposes. The announcement sparked an immediate wave of emotions: reverence, curiosity, and apprehension. City officials first reached out to Linda Lee Cadwell, Bruce's widow, with a carefully crafted proposal to assess and restore the structural integrity of the tomb, which was already showing signs of wear. According to records released by the Seattle Department of Historic Preservation, the site had bravely withstood 5 decades of the Pacific Northwest's wet and harsh climate, but now required special attention to ensure its preservation for the next 50 years. For Linda, the decision was not an easy one. In a rare statement to the Seattle Times, she admitted to deep hesitation, stating that the grave had always been more than just stone and earth. It was sacred ground. Even so, she gave her blessing, moved by the idea that preserving the site was a way to honor Bruce's legacy, not to disturb his memory. The preservation planning involved both advanced technologies and a profound sense of cultural responsibility. Engineers installed a climate-controlled structure to prevent moisture damage during the process. Ground-penetrating radar technology was carefully used to thoroughly scan the area before any physical intervention took place, and official reports confirmed that all methods employed would be completely non-invasive, treating the entire procedure much more like an archaeological expedition rather than just a simple maintenance job. Security measures around Lakeview Cemetery were significantly intensified in the weeks leading up to the highly anticipated opening. A specialized company was hired to keep the perimeter secure, while also ensuring ceremonial access to the site. Shannon Lee, Bruce's daughter, worked together with Buddhist monks to organize rituals honoring her father's spiritual legacy before the work began. These ceremonies, shared through the local press and community organizations, reinforced the symbolic and spiritual significance of the event. Linda also contributed handwritten letters and original documents from the construction of the tomb, dated 1973. The tragic loss of Brandon Lee. Few stories in Hollywood are as moving as that of the Lee family, where history not only repeated itself but deepened the pain. 2 decades after Bruce Lee's untimely farewell in 1973, his only son, Brandon Lee, met an equally sudden and enigmatic fate. Both, talented and on the verge of greatness, left us far too soon. This shared tragedy came to symbolize the fragility of promise and the burden of a legacy. Born in 1965, Brandon Lee inherited not only his father's last name, but also the expectations that came with it. However, those who knew him said that Brandon never tried to live in Bruce's shadow. He trained in martial arts under the guidance of close family friends and trusted masters, but his goal was to be his own man, someone who respected the past without being consumed by it. This identity began to manifest itself in his films. In productions like Showdown in Little Tokyo and Rapid Fire, Brandon began to shine with his own light, demonstrating not only physical precision but also a striking screen presence. Critics highlighted his charisma, his dramatic range, and his emotional depth, qualities that would be fully revealed in The Crow, a role that promised to be his definitive breakthrough. But that breakthrough never happened. On March 31, 1993, while filming a scene in Wilmington, North Carolina, a prop gun was mistakenly loaded with a real bullet. During the take in which his character was supposed to be shot, the gun actually fired, hitting Brandon in the abdominal area. Even after emergency surgery, he did not survive. He was only 28 years old. The official investigation conducted by the North Carolina Occupational Safety and Health Administration concluded that the tragedy occurred due to negligence and failures in set supervision. The loss deeply shocked the film industry and devastated fans who had been admiring Brandon's determined rise. The funeral took place in Seattle. In a gesture full of meaning, he was buried next to his father at Lakeview Cemetery. 2 lives, 2 legacies, and now 2 headstones side by side, one representing the man who changed the world. The other, A son who had everything it took to do the same. Over the years, the shared grave has become a place of pilgrimage. People from all over the world leave flowers, letters, and mementos related to martial arts as a tribute to father and son. Treasures preserved in time. At the moment the last seal of the tomb was removed, it wasn't what the team saw that impacted them the most. It was what they felt. Preserved beneath the stone for more than 5 decades, the air inside Bruce Lee's burial chamber carried not only the scent of sandalwood, but also the powerful presence of a life frozen in time. Everything there had been placed with such intention and preserved with such care that entering that space felt less like opening a tomb and more like a direct return to the year 1973. What truly made that tomb special was not its size or grandeur, but rather the astonishing state of preservation of the artifacts it housed. While most burial sites from the same era show visible signs of wear, Bruce Lee's resting place seemed to defy time. Silk fabrics, carefully arranged around the chamber and chosen for their traditional symbolism, still displayed a gentle sheen. The wooden structures showed exceptionally very few noticeable signs of aging, which was a result of the careful and deliberate combination between ancient Chinese preservation techniques and modern sealing methods, as meticulously recorded in the original notes made by Linda Lee Cadwell. Experts consulted by the Lee family were impressed by the fact that the tomb had withstood moisture, insects, and the slow decomposition of organic materials so well. Then came the personal items, each one a window into Bruce's intimate world. A pair of nunchaku, unmistakably linked to his legendary presence on screen, was carefully stored in a sealed compartment. The varnished finish remained intact, untouched by time. Shannon Lee confirmed in an interview given in 2025 that those nunchaku were part of a private collection that Bruce had set aside during the filming of Enter the Dragon. Just a few inches away, a Wing Chun training manual was found, its pages marked, wrapped in silk. As they leafed through its contents, the team came across notes made by Bruce, written in both Chinese and English. The handwriting, though a bit faded, was unmistakably his. They were more than just technical corrections or practice exercises. They were reflections, short phrases about movement, discipline, identity, and the fusion between tradition and innovation. Part book, part philosophical diary. Even more intimate objects, carefully folded family photographs, a jade amulet meant to protect the soul, and an aged envelope marked only with the inscription, "For Shannon," remained untouched, exactly as they had been placed during the original ceremony. The burial records that Linda had preserved since 1973 were crucial for verifying the authenticity and precise location of each item. For the preservation team, these discoveries transformed the mission from a historical project into a deeply human experience. As news of the find spread, the world's attention turned to what else might be hidden inside. Unconfirmed whispers began to circulate, impossible to ignore, about personal letters or final writings kept in deeper areas of the tomb. The opening of the tomb, which was supposed to be just a simple act of preservation, quickly became a landmark moment in the ever-evolving history of Bruce Lee's legacy. On a quiet morning in 2025, with the world watching closely, the tomb that had remained sealed for more than half a century was finally opened. It wasn't the engineering or the technologies involved that touched people's hearts. It was the weight of history. For the first time since 1973, Bruce Lee's resting place ceased to be just a symbol. It was becoming a new chapter, alive and unfolding in real time. The operation began with the arrival of Buddhist monks at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle. They performed a traditional ceremony at sunrise. Their chants echoed softly throughout the site, providing a spiritual foundation before any tool was even touched. Shannon Lee, present among the monks, represented not only the daughter, but the guardian of the legacy. Her silent and steady presence set the tone for the occasion. These rituals, coordinated with local cultural organizations, honored Bruce's heritage and set the spirit for everything that would follow. This would not be treated as an excavation, but as an act of reverence. Within the isolated work area, a team specialized in preservation began the procedures. Every instrument had been sterilized. Every step was meticulously planned in advance. The granite seal, engraved with Bruce's guiding words and worn down by decades of weather, was the first barrier. As it was gradually removed, a mix of reverence and tension overtook the team. Beneath it, there was a complex series of protective layers, designed in 1973 to preserve not only Bruce's remains, but also any personal items placed beside him. The durability of these layers spoke volumes about the careful vision of the original design. The preservation team proceeded with absolute precision, using low-intensity lighting and real-time environmental sensors to avoid even the slightest damage. Each layer revealed its own narrative, seals that had not been touched in 52 years, materials that had silently withstood the test of time. Watching closely, Linda Lee Cadwell provided insights that only she could share. She explained the significance of each compartment, from spaces reserved for incense inspired by Chinese funeral rituals to vacuum-sealed chambers created to store personal items. Every detail reflected Bruce's unique identity, a man deeply rooted in ancient tradition, yet with a visionary and modern mindset. When the final protective layer was reached, anticipation hung in the air like a held breath. The team took a brief pause, reviewing their notes and scanning the space one last time. This was the threshold. Behind that final seal could be untouched memories, handwritten notes, or objects Bruce might have chosen as his final companions. One last message from Bruce. What began as an effort of preservation soon turned into something much more intimate, when the team discovered what may be the most personal artifact of all, a sealed letter handwritten by Bruce Lee. Kept inside a lacquered wooden box marked with the emblem of a dragon, the envelope bore the unmistakable seal of red wax, still intact after more than 50 years. This seal, with intertwined dragons embossed in high relief, made the team stop completely. This was not a simple keepsake. It was something placed with intention, hidden with care, and now finally revealed. The decision to open the envelope was not made hastily. According to the protocols recorded in the 2025 Preservation Report, any personal item with the seal required the utmost attention. After documentation, the seal was gently broken, revealing a folded sheet of thick parchment. The fluid and familiar handwriting left no doubt. It was Bruce's. Dated just a few days before his departure in July 1973, the letter was not addressed to any specific person. Instead, it began with a universal greeting. To those who carry my vision. What followed was not a farewell, but a challenge. A message written for anyone willing to listen, regardless of the era. In the letter, Bruce encouraged readers to reject imitation and embrace their personal truth. The obstacles you face are not solid, they are illusions shaped by fear, he wrote. Be like water, resilient, adaptable, without limits. Do not follow me. Find your own path and walk it unapologetically. His words echoed many of his earlier teachings. But there was something about this message that felt more condensed, more direct, as if it were meant to endure. Present during the reading, Linda Lee Cadwell silently confirmed that the tone and style matched the private notes Bruce used to leave her. For her, it was not a surprise, it was a confirmation. Shannon Lee, who was also present, called the letter a final gift from her father. In a statement shared with the international press, she described the message as Bruce's voice reaching across time to remind us not of who he was, but of who we can become. The letter sparked a global conversation. Martial artists began quoting his words during training. Philosophers debated its meaning. Fans from all over the world shared excerpts as a digital mantra of resilience. It was not studied as a mere historical note, but as a living philosophy. More than half a century after his farewell, Bruce Lee was once again speaking directly to the world. When the preservation team finished their work and resealed the tomb, they did not just leave behind a place of remembrance. They left a message for the future. That letter, discovered in silence and shared with the world, reinforced what Bruce always believed, that a person's true legacy is not carved in stone, but in the way others continue to carry the spark they left behind. Bruce Lee's last words were not a farewell, but a call to action. Thank you for your company. Go ahead and click on the cards on the screen to watch another video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.